Here's pragerupoo to lie about fracking and cherry-pick data in an attempt to make the effects of climate change look better than they actually are. Keep in mind, he'll refer to fracking as fossil fuels, because the word fracking has a pejorative connotation, and fossil fuels is obviously more euphemistic.
What if I told you that someone had developed an energy source that could help us solve our biggest environmental challenges, purify our water and air, make our cities and homes more sanitary, and keep us safe from potential catastrophic climate change? What if I also told you that this energy source was cheap, plentiful, and reliable?
I'd assume you were talking about wind and solar.
There is such a source. You probably know it as fossil fuel.
Wrong. The extraction of fossil fuels releases nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere, which contributes to the formation of smog and acid rain. And not only this, but the release of carbon monoxide into the atmosphere traps heat, causing global warming, which is noticeable in the drastically rising global aggregate surface temperature. Moreover, fracking, which is how pragerupoo is funded, releases large amounts of methane, which is more than 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere.
Oil, natural gas, coal. But wait, don't fossil fuels pollute our environment and make our climate unlivable?
Yes.
That, of course, is what we're told, and what our children are taught. But let's look at the data. Here's a graph you've probably never seen: the correlation between use of fossil fuels and access to clean water. More fossil fuel, more clean water.
Then why does this article by Harvard School of Public Health say, quote, all forms of pollution eventually make their way to water. Air pollution settles onto lakes and oceans. Land pollution can seep into an underground stream, then to a river, and finally to the ocean. Thus, waste dumped in a vacant lot can eventually pollute a water supply, unquote. And not only this, but the illustration graphs access to calories per person per day, so where the hell does it graph fossil fuel use? We can find any spurious correlation, but that doesn't mean X is causing Y. Otherwise, we'd already have sufficient reason to believe Nicolas Cage movies are causing people to drown. But this guy isn't right in the back pockets of people who've made their fortunes off fossil fuels, is he?
Am I saying the more that we have used fossil fuel, the cleaner our water has become? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That doesn't mean swaths of water aren't polluted.
We take clean water for granted. We turn on a tap, and it's there. But getting it there takes a massive amount of energy. Think of the man-made reservoirs, the purification plants, the network of pipes.
And it would be better if that all relied on renewables.
They lack the energy, so they lack clean water. More fossil fuel?
The reason we've had cleaner water over time is because of state intervention into public access to clean water. Since you're omitting the fact that extraction of fossil fuels does heavily contribute to water pollution, and just citing a correlation, we can extrapolate ridiculous conclusions such as Nicolas Cage causing people to drown, margarine making people divorce more in Maine, crude oil imports in Norway causing drivers to get killed by colliding into trains. This is such an absurd point to make.
More clean water. The same is true of sanitation. By the use of cheap, plentiful, and reliable energy from fossil fuels, we have made our environment cleaner.
Then why have concentrations of greenhouse gases risen over time?
Better sanitation. Okay, what about air quality? Here's a graph of the air pollution trends in the United States over the last half-century, based on data from the Environmental Protection Agency.
Despite the fact that fossil fuel contributes to pollution?
Even though we use more fossil fuel than ever.
Oh, how fitting he cited data from the EPA, which is convenient for us because it has this to say about how air quality has improved over time. Quote, as a result of the permanent phase-out of leaded gasoline, controls on emissions of lead compounds through EPA's air toxics program, and other national and state regulations, airborne lead concentrations in the US decreased 98% between 1980 and 2005. After 2005, the EPA methodology for lead changed and is not comparable to the 2005 and earlier numbers. Since 2008, emissions have continued to decrease by 30% from 2008 to 2017, unquote. As such is the pleasure of letting your opponent walk into the rake and step on it.
How is this achieved? Above all, by using anti-pollution technology, powered by fossil fuel, oil, natural gas, and coal. But even
I like how he doesn't specify what this anti-pollution technology supposedly powered by fossil fuels is, and just moves along to the next point. The recent concentrations of pollutants have decreased over time is because of state intervention.
It was a deadly global problem until the late 19th century, when cheap kerosene, a fossil fuel byproduct, became available in America and Europe. indoor pollution is still a major issue in the developing world today. The best solution? Fossil fuels.
Despite the fact that because burning kerosene releases greenhouse gases which are damaging to the environment. Okay, buddy.
And now we come to the biggest fossil fuel concern of all, global warming. On this very sensitive topic, we need to get our terms straight. There is a big difference between mild global warming and catastrophic global warming. We can all agree on that, right? The issue isn't, does burning fossil fuel have some warming impact? It does.
Most of the impact, as a matter of fact.
Is the climate warming dangerously fast?
Yes.
In 1986, NASA climate scientist James Hansen, one of the world's most prominent critics of the use of fossil fuels, predicted that if current trends are unchanged, temperatures would rise 2 to 4 degrees in the first decade of the 2000s. But as you can see from this graph, since 2000, the trend line is essentially flat. Little or no.
What a disgustingly dishonest graph. The scale at which this guy illustrates the increase in temperature anomaly shows pragerupoo's dishonesty, because any accurate representation of the situation would prove that the increase is nowhere near a flat line at all. Even the most modest increases in global temperature anomaly have empirically shown to result in rising sea level, coastal flooding, beach erosion, salinization of water, droughts, permafrost thawing undermining infrastructure, habitat destruction, bleaching of the Great Barrier Reefs, migration of invasive species to unnatural habitats. Should I go on?
Last 15 years. That's probably why we hear much less talk about global warming and much more talk about climate change.
Climate refers to long-term regional patterns, typically including rainfall and humidity, predominantly over the course of 30 years, whereas global warming is the long-term heating of Earth's surface, observed since the pre-industrial period.
Has this climate change made our world more dangerous? The key statistic here, one that is, unfortunately, almost never mentioned, is climate-related deaths. That is, how many people die each year from a climate-related cause, including droughts, floods, storms, and extreme temperatures. In the last 80 years, as CO2 emissions have rapidly escalated, the annual rate of climate-related deaths worldwide has rapidly declined by 98%.
Yes, because of significant state intervention into providing infrastructure to previously underserved communities. And it's really telling that's your benchmark to determine if the globe is warming fast enough. Even though the disastrous effects of climate change have been documented thoroughly, as mentioned previously, you don't think any action is necessary in curbing emissions? And I highly doubt that if any of these statistics were different, you'd even change your mind. Rather, you'd move the goalpost again and cherry pick more figures that make it seem like the situation is okay because a billionaire handed you a fat paycheck.
The reason is that the energy from fossil fuel has allowed the developed world to build a durable civilization.
And it could have been more durable going into the future if we had switched to renewables a long time ago.
Storms, and so on. The developing world.
Then why have fossil fuels been empirically demonstrated to cause these very things that you're saying it's resilient to?
Natural disasters can still wreak terrible havoc, would like the chance to do the same. But to do that, they will need a lot more energy. The cheapest, fastest, and easiest way to get that energy is from fossil fuels.
That's gotta be one of the most brazen lies ever told by PragerU. As of 2022, when it comes to the cheapest sources, that's onshore wind and solar, which cost less than gas, coal, geothermal, and nuclear. Christ, did the Wilkes brothers give you so much grift money to the point where you're suggesting they should export fracking technology to the third world, which is disproportionately affected by climate-related disastrous effects? Could these people get any more deceitful?
In sum, fossil fuels don't take a naturally safe environment and make it dangerous.
Yes, they do.
Empower us to take a naturally dangerous environment and make it cleaner and safer.
No, they don't.
I'm Alex Epstein of the Center for Industrial Progress for Prager University.
Go fuck yourself. Well, folks, it's no secret that PragerU has been a hotbed of propaganda and deceit since its inception, but this truly epitomizes how dishonest they're willing to get. What this guy did in this video, I don't remember his name, has pointed out spurious correlations involved in the improvement of people's well-being caused by state intervention, yet attributes those successes to fossil fuels with no evidence whatsoever. As we continue to see the disastrous effects of climate change, people like this downplay it and insist that if we only used more non-renewable energy, we could curb the negative consequences. Bullshit. What happened is this guy got a hefty stub from the fracking industry and now he's grasping at straws to make it look okay. Stop lying.